Welcome back to the recession of Disney animation. Let's get right back to it with number 5, Meet the Robinsons. Meet the Robinsons was a movie I really wanted to like. There's lots of good things about it. It's got heart for one thing, which I can't say about Disney's 2 movies preceding this, and the characters are generally likable. While I can't say I didn't enjoy this movie, I have to say that it wasn't one of my favorites either. It's really cute and bright and colorful, but I just don't think I'm the person this movie is meant for. Like some of the previous films of this era, this movie is less of a family film and more of a kid movie. That doesn't make it bad, it just makes it less accessible to me. It's very silly and cartoonish in a childish way. It was so silly in some parts that it just kinda lost me. The animation too is a little weird. It's improved from Chicken Little, thank goodness, but it's not yet the standard it could be. I can see why people like this movie, and I certainly can't say that I had a bad viewing experience. It's a nice, heartwarming film that doesn't talk down to its audience, which is certainly respectable. It's far from a bad movie, it's just a movie that wasn't for me. Number 4, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. It's kinda hard to reconcile my feelings towards Atlantis. I can see why some people don't like it so much, but all I can say is that I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't a bad movie, not to me at least, and I got into the story and characters pretty easily. I thought it was a fun film with some pretty good visuals. I cared about Milo and Kida a good bit, but some of the other characters I could have lived without, especially the villains. It was kind of obvious who the villains were from the get-go, so the twist wasn't much of a twist, and their motivation was really predictable and played out. The villains were just forgettable, and they brought down the movie. I've heard that Milo and Rourke are too opposite from one another, and I agree with this statement. There is no real personality connection between the two. The best adversaries are similar in some way, but these two are just too different. In short, they don't complement each other like a hero and villain should. Overall, Atlantis was an enjoyable movie, but not much else. It wasn't the greatest of stories, but at least I had a good time watching it. I wish some of the aforementioned films were more like this one. Oh well, next. Number 3, Bolt. Combine my feelings toward Meet the Robinsons and Atlantis, and you pretty much get how I feel towards Bolt. I enjoyed this movie. It's entertaining and has a lot of heart. The movie is charming, heartwarming, and even delivers some laughs. I was actually starting to worry if Disney films during this era could be funny. The premise is pretty neat, and I enjoyed seeing it being played out. John Travolta's titular character is really endearing, and you really root for him to get back home. The film has some memorable characters and a good message, but in the end, it's just not the greatest. It's cute, but not much else. I honestly don't mean to sound negative towards this film because I do think it is worthwhile and a definite step up in the right direction, but it didn't capture me like a good Disney movie should. In fact, this didn't feel much like a Disney movie at all, but I can't really say if that's a bad thing or not. Bolt is a good movie, not a great one. It's enjoyable and fun and good for the whole family to enjoy. It's just not my favorite. Number 2, The Emperor's New Groove. I'm gonna be honest, when I started this era, The Emperor's New Groove was the film I was most looking forward to seeing. I had seen it a few times when I was younger, and all I remember doing was laughing so hard that my eyes watered. So when I was getting to this movie, I was both excited and nervous. What if this film wasn't as funny as I remembered? Well, I have good news. The film largely holds up. I may not have busted a gut laughing, but I really, truly enjoyed watching this movie again. Like with Bolt, this movie doesn't feel much like a Disney movie. It's too silly and manic with not enough whimsy. But you know what? That's okay. This film is funny, charming, and insanely enjoyable. The characters are memorable, and it is ridiculously quotable. They even managed to squeeze in a good moral here and there. It's a quick, fun ride that is definitely worth the watch. By sheer likability alone, it earned its place near the top of the list. And number 1, Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is the best movie of the era, by a long shot. It's a sweet, lovely film for the family about family. Lilo and Nani's relationship is the heart of this film, and you genuinely root for them to succeed. Adorable little Stitch is just an added bonus. The film is funny and incredibly heartwarming, and I'm not gonna lie, I shed a little tear the first time I saw this. It's warm and sweet, treating all its characters and audience with care. This was really the only movie of the era that felt like a true Disney movie, Aliens notwithstanding. It's also the only film in the era that I would classify as really good. Though I enjoyed this film immensely, I still can't say that it's a great movie. Honestly, the fact that this movie so easily beats the rest just tells you how weak this era was. I wouldn't put Lilo and Stitch in my top 10 favorite Disney animated flicks. I'm not even sure I'd put it in my top 15. That said, I think it's a wonderful, important film for the family, so I highly recommend it. It's truly the brightest spot in what turned out to be a pretty bad era for Disney animation. So thank you, Lilo and Stitch, for proving that the studio could still accomplish something worthwhile. This era of Disney animation was by far the toughest to get through. It just seemed like one terrible movie after the next, with only a handful of goodness to break through the bad. Creatively, this might be the lowest point of Disney animation, even lower than the Dark Ages. Thankfully, towards the end of the era, things were starting to look up again as the animation studio changed leaders, and thanks to this change, Disney animation began seeing yet another upswing. This brings me to the final era, the revival of Disney animation. Stay tuned.